Hi, I'm Andrea. Thank you so much for joining me for this 30-minute yoga practice. I have a yoga mat, but if you don't have one, you're welcome to do this on a carpeted area in your home, or maybe there's a rug that is solidly sticking to the ground that you can use, not one that's going to crumple up and slide around and become a magic carpet. I have 2 blocks. If you have 2 thick books, that's a great substitute. And I do have a folded blanket. You can use a folded beach towel, the throw blanket from your couch. We'll start a little bit differently than we sometimes do if you do this with me often. We'll start in child's pose, and I want us to understand child's pose a little bit. Theoretically, child's pose is where you sink your hips back into your heels. Realistically, that might not quite feel like the way that you want to do your child's pose. So if bending your knees that deeply is not quite working for you, you can curl your toes under. You can take your folded blanket underneath your knees, and you can also walk yourself forward so you have plenty of space, and even place a block underneath your head as your child's pose. So this might be a much better place for you to enjoy your child's pose than this idea of sinking your hips close to your heels. Let's take a moment. I'm a fan of arms out in front of us because we can give ourselves a little bit of support there. There are people who like to take their arms alongside them. That's great too. And let's get quiet and stop here, curled up with ourselves, so that we can start. We start to pay attention to our breath. That, along with this little child's pose, curling up, helps us to turn the arrows of attention inward as opposed to distractedly outward. Every time you inhale, fully experience your inhale. And every time you exhale, fully experience your exhale. We'll come onto all fours, and on all fours, we're trying to line up our shoulders over our wrists. We'll curl our toes under. You still might want to have the blanket underneath your knees, and we'll do cat-cow. I'm going to turn a little bit more sideways for you because I want us to oomph into our arms and keep our upper body solid, and just move a little sass into our tailbone as we lift our tailbone, and then tuck our tailbone, so we're learning how to move our pelvis and avoid something called frozen pelvis. There really is that, but not for us. So we'll go back and forth, just with this pelvic tilt towards the sky, and then tucking our tail between our legs, and we keep a solid oomph into our arms the whole time. Just 2 or 3 more back and forths here. Then stay on all fours. Keep that shoulders over wrists. Add the padding to your knees if you want or need it. Right arm up to the sky. We'll swoop our right arm underneath us and come to the outside of our head on the right side and the outside of our right shoulder. Carefully, and maybe you like some sort of proppage here, a cushion, your folded blanket, a block. We unravel, come to all fours again, and now it's left arm up, and it swoops underneath us. We come to the outside of our head on our left side, outside of our left shoulder, and we'll just take a couple of moments to luxuriate here. Unraveling this side and coming to our bellies, all the way down onto our bellies. We will now take Sphinx with our forearms parallel to the side edges, the long edges of our mat. Now, we don't want to collapse into our shoulders, so let's karate chop the ground with our forearms, press into the tops of our feet until our kneecaps come off our mat. Traction our elbows towards us so we can feel, although we're not sliding around on our mat, that our chest is gliding through the gateway of our arms. And we want to keep track of what our chin's up to. It will try to do the back bend for us. Instead, let it just be parallel to the ground. So it's like it's floating parallel to the ground. And then we'll lower down and slide our hands next to our ribs. This is where it gets even more tempting to throw our chin forward, but we won't. We'll feel that traction of Sphinx, but in a cobra pose, and we want to ignite our legs. So press into the tops of your feet. Let your collarbones feel like they're widening away from each other, like there's a little smile to them. And then we'll lower down, curl your toes under. One piece brings us back to the all fours that we were in moments ago. So a little core work as we come onto all fours and we pause here. Now, while we're on all fours, let's really refine what's happening in our hands. So spread your hands wide. Imagine that you have a circle around the entire circumference of each of your palms, and you want to secure the whole circle on the ground, and then feel like you've got little starfish there that all of your fingers are reaching into your mat too. For a moment, let's do what I don't want you to do. Let's collapse. So collapse your chest and feel that you're hanging in your joints, and that's not what we want to practice. We want to push the ground away. So we've got this mapping of our hands and integrity of pushing the ground away. Now, we do a little bit of let's actually do this. Let's step our right foot back so that the ball of our right foot is on the ground, and just keep track that we're not collapsed into our shoulders again, right? Now step your left foot, voila, a plank position. Actively push that ground away. Now bring your knees down, but right underneath where they were. So not quite our all fours. This is a modified plank. We use it a lot when we flow our Sun Salutation A, which we'll be doing soon. Shoulders are over wrists. We're oomping into our arms. Our bellies are strong. And then we will lower with our elbows, kissing our ribs all the way down onto our belly and come into that cobra that we did. So uncurl your toes and bring your chest gently through the gateway of your arms. Lower down, curl your toes under, come through all fours. And then down dog, it's like our little sass when we lifted our hips in our cat-cow. Let's start there. So lift your hips, think hook in your tailbone, push the ground away actively with your arms, and then lift your hips up and back like they're trying to get to where the ceiling and the wall meet up. Step your feet as wide as your mat, bend your knees quite a bit, and stay with pushing the ground away until it feels delicious to feel all that space in your spine, the front body, and the two sides of your body. And now walk forward. Your feet come all the way up to your hands, and we'll make sure that they're hip distance and parallel once we're there. Slide your hands onto your ankles, shins, or thighs. Inhale, lift your heart. Then exhale, hinge at your hips and fold, dive back in. Then we inhale, rise, reach, thumbs to the sky, a V shape, and we'll stand in our mountain. Palms face out, that's happening at our shoulder joint. Little soft bend to our knees, and we still have our chin floating parallel to the ground. Let's flow Sun Salutation A. Inhale, arms out and up, thumbs to the sky, a V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips, hands to your thighs or shins or ankles. Inhale, slide your hands up, bend your knees deeply, palms go flat. Step it to down dog and push the ground away the whole time that you find the hook in your tailbone, and lift your hips up and back. Now shift forward, shoulders over wrists. We find that plank, and then we bring our knees down for our modified plank. We're still pushing the ground away as we bend our elbows and come to our belly. Once we're on our belly, uncurl your toes, traction into cobra pose. Maybe it's Sphinx instead. Lower down, curl your toes under. In one chunk, we come to all fours. And then we lift our hips up and back, pushing the ground away and making our way into downward facing dog. Walk your feet forward to your hands. Feet are hip distance at the front edge of our mat. We'll slide our hands up and inhale, glide our hands down as we exhale, and then rise, reach thumbs to the sky, a V, and we stand in our mountain with our palms facing out. Let's flow that whole sun salutation one more time through. Inhale, V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips, hands to your thighs, shins, or ankles. Slide your hands up, inhale, bend your knees deeply, palms go flat and solid, push the ground away, hook in your tailbone, down dog. Shift shoulders over wrists for your plank and then knees down, and we lower to our bellies, slow motion. Uncurl your toes, come into cobra pose. Lower down, curl your toes under, come through all fours, and then your hips lift you up and back into downward facing dog. Now we'll lift our right leg back behind us and then step it forward, and most of us will need to help that along, and there is zero shame in that. Take your 2 books or blocks, frame that right foot with your 2 tall books or blocks, and heel toe your right foot over to the right a little bit. We're on the ball of our back foot, and we've got a deep bend in our front knee. So we want to feel that to be true. Once we've got a nice solid base, we'll come upright. Bend your back knee a bit, come upright, arms to the sky, thumbs to the sky, a V shape. If you want to work on straightening your back leg, you can, but if that's pitching you forward, there's no reason to worry about that little bend, because we're looking to be in mountain pose from our waist up. Then bring your hands to your blocks, move your blocks off the side of your mat, step it to your downward facing dog. Once you're in down dog, left leg lifts, we step it forward, likely we help it along. We're framing our left foot with our blocks, and we feel left hip back, right hip forward a little bit, and we'll bend our back knee, right knee, to facilitate upright, thumbs to the sky, a V shape. Then we take our hands to our blocks and move our blocks so that we can come to down dog with that full circle, circumference of our palm, pushing the ground away. Now shift it to plank position, shoulders over, wrists, keep pushing the ground away as we bring our knees down and come all the way down onto our bellies for that sun salutation. Uncurl your toes, cobra pose. Lower down enough that you can curl your toes under, come through all fours. And then our hips lift us up and back into down dog. We feel the hook in our tailbone. Walk forward, feet come to your hands, hip distance. Slide your hands up, inhale, lift your heart. Exhale, hinge at your hips and fold. Inhale, rise, reach thumbs to the sky, a V, and then we pause in our mountain, palms facing out. We'll flow that at a little bit more of a clip, moving all those ingredients together. Inhale, V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips, hands to your thighs, shins, or ankles. Slide your hands up, inhale, lift your heart. Palms go flat, and we step back to down dog. Right leg lifts behind us, then we step that right foot forward and maybe help it along. You can use your blocks or not, coming upright right away into our crescent with a V shape. Hands to your mat. Step back to down dog. Push the ground away. Actively lift your left leg back behind you. Step your left foot forward. Help it along if it wants it. Come upright, crescent pose, maybe that bend in your back knee. And then hands to our mat. We step back to down dog. You can stay in down dog or return to the child's pose we started in, or shoulders over wrists in a plank. Knees down carefully, elbows bend as we lower to our bellies. Uncurl your toes, come into cobra pose. Lower down, curl your toes under in one piece. We come to all fours, and then we let our hips lift us up and back. Push the ground away for down dog. Walk your feet forward to your hands. Once you've arrived hip distance and parallel, hands glide up your shins, ankles, or thighs. Inhale. Exhale, hinge at your hips. Then inhale, rise, reach thumbs to the sky, a V, and we pause with our palms facing out. A little housekeeping of our props. We'll take one block and move it now off the side of our mat using the long edge of our mat as the front edge. So we're going to face wide, and we want our 2 blocks off that opposite long edge of our mat as we do. Take your arms out to the side wide, step your legs wide, and angle your ankles underneath your wrists a little bit. We bend our knees into a bit of a plie, which we'll be using in a moment, but first we have some arm positioning to tend to. So once we've got ourselves set up with our legs, let's keep our legs straight but turned out and wide. Take your right arm up to the sky, thumb to the sky, and then pat yourself on the back with your right hand with that right elbow up to the sky, or as straight up to the sky as you can. Left arm out to the side, thumb faces down. Place the back of your hand to the small of your back. So back of your left hand to the small of your back, and you're patting yourself on the back with your right hand. Now, left arm can travel up as if to scratch something in between your shoulder blades, or even reach for your right hand. We want to make sure that we don't turn this into a big giant dump into our low back. So feel that there's a little engagement of your abdominals. Then we bend our knees into our plie with our hands tied behind our back, and we stay and breathe here for 3 moments. We'll straighten our legs, but keep that same stance. Release our arms out to the side and switch it out. Now we pat ourselves on the back with our left hand, and our right arm, thumb faces down. We might just place back of our hand to the small of our back, or we can walk that right hand to itch the scratch the itch between our shoulder blades, maybe even reach for our left hand. We be careful not to dump, and then we bend our knees, and we go into the fire of the intensity of our legs with our arms tied behind our back in this pose for a few moments. Then we'll straighten our legs and release our arms. Turn all toes to face the long edge of our mat. Turn your right leg out so that your right foot is facing the short edge of your mat. Cheat your left heel back at a 45-degree angle. Arms out to the side, thumbs to the sky. We're not going to side bend. We want to think of a hip hinge. So let your left hip lift. There's a bit of a karate chop feel to our right hip. Reach way out with your right hand. Find your book or block. Place that outside of your right foot. We're not rounding and crumbling our arms towards us. Spin your inner upper arms away from each other. Let that open your heart. And now, let your left thumb face down and bring your left back of your hand to the small of your back. Right ribs turn to the sky. A half bind in our triangle pose. And we'll have a nice long 45-second soak, just like this. We release our right arm up to the sky. On our way out, a little moment in a warrior two. So take a look down at your right foot. Bend that right knee. Make sure that you have a vertical line from your right knee to your right ankle. Move your block off the side of your mat and out of your way in your warrior two. Now, while we're in warrior two, take the back of your left hand to the small of your back. Take your right arm up to the sky. Pat yourself on the back, and maybe even lean your right elbow back towards your left heel just a smidge, just the teensiest bit. Then release your arms out to the side, straighten your front leg, turn all toes to face the long edge of your mat, and turn left foot to face the back of your mat. Cheat your right heel at a 45-degree angle. We first hip hinge into our triangle. So There's a hinge at our left hip. We reach way out with our left hand. We find our block, place our hand on our block outside our left foot. And once we find that, we turn our left thumb to face down and weave that, or sorry, right thumb to face down, weave that under, behind our back, and our left ribs rotate to the sky. For some reason that's hard for me on both sides. Let's soak now for a nice sweet stretch on this side where we are. We come to warrior two, so we'll release our right arm up to the sky, bend our left knee, and before we remove the prop, we make sure it's a vertical line from our left knee to our left ankle. Block off to the side, warrior two. Once we're in warrior two, back of your right hand to the small of your back, left arm pats you on the back, and this is perfect. You might lean it a little bit back towards your right heel. So we're not turning it into a back bend, we're just thinking like a little bit of a really nice opening side stretch on our left side, and then we reach our arms out to the side in our warrior two, straighten that front leg, turn all toes to face the long edge of our mat, heel toe until we're hip distance, and then we will make our way to the front edge of our mat and just organize our props on the way, stacking our blocks off to the side where they're within reach if we want them, standing, positioning ourselves facing that short front edge of our mat. Inhale, V-shaped thumbs to the sky. Exhale, hinge at your hips, hands to thighs, shins or ankles. Slide your hands up, inhale. Palms flat takes us to a downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, we shift shoulders over wrists and bring our knees down on our mat. Push the ground away as we lower all the way to our bellies and uncurl our toes into a cobra pose. We'll lower down, curl our toes under, and come to all fours, and we stay on our all fours and come to seated. So just scoot your legs around out in front of you. I'll turn sideways so this is a bit easier to see. Your feet are hip distance, knees to the sky. Take your hands behind you with your fingers facing away from you and scoot ever so carefully your butt in one direction and your arms will inch away. And then there's a magic spot where there's a stretch. Am I right? So in this magic spot where there's a stretch for our shoulders, it's not a struggle, it's a stretch. And you can play around with it a little bit. This is our cool down, so let things get soft. 45 seconds here in silent meditation and shoulder stretch. If you'd like, you can inch a little further, but there's no agenda. We're not forcing anything. 45 seconds starting now. Now I want you to exit this carefully. We'll bring ourselves up just enough that we can sit tall with our hands, our arms behind us and our fingers facing away from us. And then you'll probably want to walk your legs out in front of you a little bit to cross right ankle on top of left thigh and flex those right toes back. We're using this for a hip stretch. So slowly bend that left knee. It may not go very far. I want us to stand tall through it all. So I want us to use our hands behind us to feel an uplift of our heart, and then that will send it into a hip stretch also. Not one where you're grinding your teeth and counting the seconds for this to be over, but one where we can soak for a full silent meditative moment here, stretching a little bit into our shoulders and quite a bit into our hips. 30 more seconds here. Inch your way out slowly. You might want to take a little moment, give yourself a hug to release your arms, and then we head back in again. So fingers facing away from us, left ankle on top of right thigh, as straight with that right leg as you need, and then you snuggle it in to your own degree, and we find a place where we can be upright and enjoy a hip stretch all at once. And we also add a minute of silent meditation. Remember that we want to exit this slowly, gently, carefully. Both feet on your mat. We'll lie down and take a supine twist. So that just means a lying down twist. Let your hips scoot to the right and your knees drop over to the left. If it feels good to you, cross your right knee over your left knee. Then we head the other direction. So scoot your hips to the left, let your knees drop to the right. You might cross your left knee over your right knee. And then we bring ourselves down the middle and into our Shavasana, which could be bent kneed or straight legged, but we dedicate ourselves to our rest and digest. Feel free to stay here for your Shavasana final meditation as long as you'd like. If you're ready, we'll wiggle fingers and toes, collect knees into our chest. Roll carefully to either side. Bring ourselves to any comfortable seat with our palms up or down. And I thank you for practicing with me. I'm Andrea. I look forward to us doing this again together soon.